So today we're going to continue our conversation with Jeff Savlov, who's a family therapist and business consultant, helping owners navigate that emotional minefield of succession planning. If you missed the first episode of our conversation with Jeff, you can just click the link below to watch it. Jeff, thanks for coming back. I know you have a lot on your plate, but this is such an important topic, and I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, fun conversation.
So we talked a lot about entitlement, one not wanting the business last time, and one doesn't, and one comes in and that's and that. So, just to kind of continue along that theme, how do you work with your clients when you have multiple children that do want to stay in the business? And maybe the oldest is not the right person to lead it. I mean, this is something that we deal with a lot.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a perfect lead in for too many stories in my head to share them all, but it happens a lot. And this traditional thing of the firstborn male has got to be the right one. Like just because you're the first one to be a boy and be born before everyone else doesn't mean you're going to be the leader, but you still see that. I could think of a manufacturing company I was working with in the Midwest, and since the kid was 7 or 8 years old, the first of the G3, the third generation, right, the cousin generation, had been told, had been going to the manufacturing plant, walking around, seeing things, getting to know the people as he got older and started to, work there in middle school and high school. One day this will all be yours. You're going to run this, even as these other cousins are coming up. And when I was brought in, the family was absolutely at odds. So I'm talking about the third generation, the cousins. The second
Right.
generation was three siblings who all had kids, and their kids, almost all of them wanted to be there. So you had 7 or 8 cousins who wanted this. And they were really hoping when they hired me, even though they said, oh, we just want to, we want to learn about roles and responsibilities. We want to have a meritocracy. We want to make sure that people here really deserve to be here and can do the job. What it turned out to be is they wanted me to magically fix the firstborn male who had really no skills to be the next president. They had lost several non-family executives who quit, usually in a rage, walking
Right.
out without any notice and saying, "This guy is a cancer. You guys are great. You got a great thing. This one guy is a cancer that will rip this apart." And the truth was, my job became showing them that that was the case, that your non-family executives who you loved and are sad to have lost were right. He doesn't have the skills. I can't coach somebody with this kind of personality into a good president. And you made a commitment to an 8-year-old, 35 years ago, that just didn't make sense. And so you need to figure out how you want to deal with that. And ultimately, they agreed. They knew it somewhere deep in their gut. And they had a really tough time, but they said goodbye, found a way to let him go his own way. And then the rest of the cousins, like in the last episode, I said you have singles tennis players and then you have, hockey or football team
Right.
players. The rest of it, they were team players. They were willing to take, less salary to be able to work together. They were willing to put each other in jobs where they had skills, and they were willing to be told by one another, you don't have the skills for that job, either develop them or go back to where you do have skills. And that's what you need. You need to be able, everyone else was willing to do that. This was super painful. The one that was sort of shifted out, wasn't even letting his father, who was in the business, a G2, see the grandkids for a while. I mean, it was really brutal.
Right.
And I don't know that they ever fully got the family relationships back, but at some point, you've got a lot of employees living off this business that you want to take care of, family living off. You have to make the tough decisions, and this is not unusual.
It's very, unfortunately, a common occurrence because, you know, telling your eldest that, they're, like, you can work in sales, but you're not the person to run this. And as a parent, that's, obviously you procrastinate, you try to block it out of your head. You think things will take care of themselves, right? When you're in the business. I mean, I've seen it. And as you said, you start losing key people. And what happens then? Then the business valuation starts, growth, whatever, starts
Yeah.
to stagnate or even decline. And that's not good for anybody because many, many families are living off this business, not just your own family, but your
Yeah.
employees' families. And this, and it's interesting because your point is, your employees, they see this all. You think as an other, not really, no one sees it. Everybody sees it,
Yep.
right? Everybody sees it. And if you don't address it in the right way, to make the right changes, you're in trouble.
Yeah, Keith, when I come into a new family business situation and I do interviews, I get my best information from the non-family, and
Mm-hmm.
not just it could be an admin or it could be a non-family executive, either way, and the spouses of the family members who don't work in the business. Just give me them. I don't even need to talk to the family members most of the time. Give me a couple of non-family in the business and a couple of married in spouses, and I'll have everything I need to know because it is as obvious as you just suggested it is.
Yeah. So when you sit down and you gather all this information from the non-family members, and you sit down with this case you're engaged, say by the owner, how do you start that conversation with him or her?
When I am even thinking about taking on a family, I give a gratis hour where we just have a conversation. I might say, this is not a good fit for me. You guys might say you don't want any part of me, right? But if we all agree, we'll take a step forward. We'll know by the end of the hour. And in that first gratis hour, that's the skill set that I bring is how to bring up the real issues, and help them do it without killing each other and show them that you can talk about gently what's really going on, what your concerns are without humiliating anyone and without punching or screaming. And so I'm setting the stage even in that gratis upfront evaluation call, that to bring up the real issues. And then when I do the interviews, even more comes up and nobody's shocked. And then the skill set that I bring is being able to give them the feedback, on all of that in a way that they could hear,
Yeah.
and then helping them if they have the skills, because sometimes the families don't have the emotional skills. So do you have the skills to do your
Right.
job in the business? Do you have the emotional skills to hear feedback that your family is having issues with your behavior at work or your ability to do your job? And not all families have that, and that's another issue. And I deal with that all the time.
So, you know, just to mix it up a little bit here, how about, when you have this, you have the second marriage, and now you have the stepchildren in there. I mean, I remember going to a business, and there, when I was looking at the business, there was like different names, different, and then they're all kind of related. And so now you have the children from the first marriage, and now you have the children from the second marriage. It could be you and your partner, both of you, or him and her. That also can be create some stress on the company.
Yeah, in terms of all the issues we already talked about who gets to work there and fairness and the second marriage, right? Those kids are going to be 10, 15 years younger than the other kids, and they want to get in. They'll never catch up. So are they ever going to get to be, at the level of the first set of kids? And how is it fair? And possibly one of the owners, like the founding, owner's first spouse, might even have ownership. So your ex-spouse might have ownership, and you're trying to deal with your new spouse and their kids, and the complexity is infinite, and blended families are so common nowadays. And then there's the operating business piece and all that goes with it. But then there's an estate planning piece, which I often get involved in. I'm not a trusted estate attorney, but I help families to really think through this is volatile. Let's slow it down. Let's look at fair and what's a version of fair that you can all live with, manage the taxes, and accomplish what you want to accomplish. But that gets really tricky. So you've got the operating business and all that, and then you've got how do you estate plan the wealth you've created?
So, so that, so how about, so a situation, I appreciate that. I mean, look, there's a lot going on. And I mean, obviously communication, transparency, certain sacrifices have to be made, and people understanding, frankly, of what is and acceptance, I guess. So we have a lot of situations we run in where the owner determines that my kids can't do this. They're in the business, but I need to cash out. I need to take some money out. And having that conversation that I'm selling. And then, but I want you to, there's going to be an opportunity for you with the new ownership, which all of a sudden takes a whole different dynamic, whole different dynamic to what's going to happen to me, right? Because those conversations about business, like in the hallway, at the family table, at the holidays, whatever. Very informal conversations. There's an unknown coming here, but I, as the owner, need to make that decision. How do you get involved in situations like that? How do you navigate that kind of conversation? Because it could explode into a very negative outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, Keith, there was a time in my life when I saw a family-owned restaurant, family-owned hardware store. I got this warm feeling, and I was like, I wanted to support it. After all that I've seen, now I'm very ambivalent. When I see family-owned, I'm like, okay, which kind of family is it? Is this kind of a meritocracy family where the people here are really proud and humble, and they are going to give you the best? Or is this the kind where people are in this restaurant or hardware store, whatever it is, that really are selfishly looking out for themselves, and it's going to be a nightmare experience. So what used to be like this warm, fuzzy feeling now gives me trepidation. How that ties into what you just said is people buying a business, whether it's private equity or another family,
Mhm.
acquiring your business, they know this. And so the owner might think, I'm selling, but Junior, you're going to be able to work for the new guy. Anyone with any sophistication is going to want proof that the family members in the business are actually producing and able to do their job. So dad or mom might say, "Hey, Junior, you're gonna have a place when we sell." The buyer might say, "No way. From everything we can see, this kid has no place here, and we're not going to buy it if you're, insisting that he be there." And the harsh reality can come that way.
Yeah, well, we've been involved over the years with several situations where a certain buyer groups, mainly private equity firms, would, when they got into the situation, the reason why they decided not to move forward. We had other buyers, so we got the deal done. But is that the family dynamics? There were so many family members in the business that how are they going to have confidence
Yeah.
that these people, and they were in all important roles, whether it's running the financials, sales and marketing, operations, who've been there for a number of years, are going to be, are going to stick with us or just parachute out, like when their parents do. And having those conversations, and the only way, really, in a lot of ways, to, or one way, I shouldn't say only way, one way to really to get them invested is a couple is with a ownership plan for themselves, right? They're not going to be majority owners, but there's an equity participation. Maybe there's the estate planning. There's certain stock will roll to them versus their parents, and then some kind of incentive plan, right? That, look, you do your job. We're going to have, we're going to give you an opportunity to be part of a 10% ownership group. You five cousins, say, or two brothers or two sisters, whatever, and then invest over time. And plus, if you perform based on X, Y, and Z, then there's a payday for you on top of it. So to get the families committed, meaning it's going to take some kind of incentive plan.
Yeah. And I've had referrals from, M&A professionals, private equity, where they said, man, this is a valuable business, but this family is a mess. If you can get them into some reasonable, working order in terms of the ownership group, in terms of who's in the business and who's not in the business, we'll reconsider
Right.
in a year. But the way it is right now, we can't touch this. And it's a shame because there is value there. They want to buy it. They're just afraid of the family stuff.
Yeah. Well, people buy, they buy the business based on historical operations, but they base it on growth, and growth is based on the people in there to perform. And if you have a team, it's mainly all family members performing. It's going to give some concerns and some hesitation to a buyer pool, which limits your buyer pool, which could affect value. So it all kinds of works hand in hand. So it's a dynamic that's very that's out there. As you said at the beginning or last episode, some families will address it. Some families decide just to procrastinate and to see it's put blinders on. And if there's situations that maybe you can share with us where maybe you weren't able to get them to make the changes necessary within the family dynamic, which unfortunately turned out to be harm the family long term from a business perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's the one I just told you about, the 8-year-old who was promised to be president, and they had to separate, and they actually went on to really grow after they made that separation. The growth spoke for itself. But other situations, people just can't. they just can't get on the same page. Trying to think of a specific one that would be good to share. I had um, the owners were almost 100 years old. Okay, could
Sounds
barely walk and hear and talk, and I mean, it really, they were close to death, but they still had full ownership and control. And the kids were in their mid 70s, two
I was going to
brothers
say,
in their
yeah.
mid 70s, still don't have, they should have retired 20 years ago, or they wanted to. And the parents just didn't trust that the brothers, because there was so much conflict between them, so they never managed it. They just hung on until the verge of death, the parents. And the lawyer brought me in, and these two guys just couldn't get out of their own way. Um, and sort of find roles that made sense and compensation that made sense. What if there was an upside? It was the third generation was already in their 40s, and they're
Right.
like, we don't want to wait until we're 75. So let us have more responsibility. They were able to, with me there, give, their father and uncle, the two 75-year-old brothers, some real feedback about how they were not professional. The cousins in the third generation had some business school and business experience outside the company. And so while the two brothers were not able to get out of their own way, the cousin stepped in and said, it's time to let us do this thing, if only for business purposes. Forget about the relationship emotional stuff. Let us just run this because there's so much potential here. So while the second generation couldn't really rise to the occasion, the cousins stepped up and did some really nice stuff.
Well, that's, you know, uh, every family's different. Every emotion's different. No one has the same traits. So when you step into these situations, there's always something that I try to call it the calculus that you think you got to figure it out after 25 years of doing this, but there's always something different because people are different. People have their own emotional traits. So trying to manage that expectation or help them make the right decision, right? What's best for them and their families is a big part of our business, and obviously is how you is your business. So, is there any final thoughts that you'd like to just talk about a little bit here as we wrap up this episode? You can share with our audience.
Just reaffirm some of the things I've said. Start early, have conversations, look at various scenarios that could come well before you're ready to make a decision about which scenario is going to make sense for you, so that you can have these conversations. People can bring up their concerns and you can address them well before, it's heated. Too many people make these technical decisions, only tell the next generation about it, when it's very close to sort of pulling the trigger, and then people are freaking out because there's not a lot of time to really process what it all means. So good communication and lots of scenario planning about the various options that are in front of them. One of you might work here and one of you doesn't. What's a fair estate plan? All three of you might go out and get out. I had this now. I got a call recently from a parents. They're all three kids have Ivy League MBAs from different schools. One works for Apple, one works for Google, and one started his own business and he's doing 150 in revenue. And all three want to come to the family business, which is much smaller than anywhere where they work, because out of a sense of love and legacy, and everyone likes each other. And the parents reached out because they were like, we have a great family. Can these three heavy hitters really own it together without killing each other? And you can
Yeah,
see why that would be a concern.
yeah, you can see a lot
So,
of
so,
headbutting.
but they reached out to me not because there's a problem. There's no problem, but they want to keep it that way. Help us have the tough conversations around this to see, does this make sense? And should we actually do it? And that's a lot of fun to do because it's not about pain. It's about avoiding pain.
Well, Jeff, this has been terrific. I think for our audience as business owner, one thing I learned today: it's never too early to start. And I'm thinking 3 to 5 years. Jeff's telling me you start when the kids are even in elementary school. So managing that emotional minefield of succession planning, whether you're transferring to the next generation or even selling outright, you can't start too early. It's very important, and it's going to make your life a lot easier the sooner you start that process. Jeff, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate it. And for our audience, if you happen to miss, like I said at the top of the episode, missed our first part with Jeff, just click the video below. You can watch that as well, and have a great day.